I was standing in Dylan's kitchen, stirring marinara sauce for our 2-year anniversary dinner, when I saw the text message that would change everything. His phone sat on the marble counter, screen up, and the notification lit up like a warning flare. The message was from someone saved as just C in his contacts. "He deserves to know the truth about you." My hand froze mid-stir. The wooden spoon clattered against the pot's edge. I knew that writing style, that cryptic tone. It was my sister, Courtney. That was the moment I realized my own sister had been destroying my relationship from the inside, and I had no idea how long it had been going on. My fingers trembled as I picked up Dylan's phone. I shouldn't have looked. I knew that, but something deep in my gut told me I needed to see this. The screen unlocked easily because I knew his passcode, the same one he'd used since we started dating. We had that kind of trust. Or at least, I thought we did. Standing there in the warm glow of the kitchen, with the smell of garlic and basil filling the air, I felt my world starting to crack. The phone felt heavy in my hand, like it was made of lead instead of glass and metal. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. I scrolled up through the conversation, my stomach twisting tighter with each message I read. The text went back 6 months. 6 entire months. How had I not known? Courtney had been methodically, carefully, planting seeds of doubt in Dylan's mind about me. She'd sent him messages late at night when she knew I wouldn't be around. "I hate to be the one to tell you this, but I saw Cher having lunch with another man today. They looked pretty close." That was from March. I remembered that day perfectly. It was Travis from my office. We'd been discussing the Henderson account over sandwiches. Completely innocent, completely professional. But the messages got worse. "You should ask Cher about her ex-boyfriend Marcus. She never told you the real reason they broke up, did she?" Another lie. Marcus and I had ended things mutually when he moved to Seattle for a job opportunity. There was no scandal, no drama. Just 2 people whose lives were heading in different directions. Then came the financial accusations. "I'm worried about you, Dylan. Cher talks a lot about your promotion and your new salary when you're not around. I just think you should be careful." My hands started shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I had never, not once, discussed Dylan's income with anyone. Not Courtney, not my parents, not my best friend Amanda. It was none of their business, and more importantly, I didn't care about Dylan's money. I made a good living as a marketing consultant. I didn't need his paycheck. The kitchen timer beeped, pulling me back to reality. The sauce was bubbling over, red droplets sizzling on the stovetop. I grabbed the pot and moved it off the heat, but I couldn't stop reading. Each message felt like a knife sliding between my ribs. Courtney had been so careful, so calculated. She never outright accused me of anything. She just planted suggestions, asked innocent-sounding questions that weren't innocent at all. "Dylan, has Cher seemed distant to you lately? She's been acting strange when I see her." Another message from 2 months ago. I hadn't been distant. I'd been stressed about a major client presentation. I'd told Dylan about it. We'd talked through my anxiety together. The front door opened. Dylan's footsteps echoed in the hallway. I barely had time to set his phone back on the counter before he walked into the kitchen. He looked exhausted, his tie loosened, his dark hair slightly disheveled from running his fingers through it. That was his tell when work had been particularly brutal. "Hey, babe," he said, but his voice lacked its usual warmth. He'd been like this for weeks now, distant, guarded. I'd thought it was stress from his architecture firm's new project. Now I knew better. "We need to talk," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Dylan's jaw tightened. He glanced at his phone on the counter, then back at me. "You went through my phone." "I saw a message," I said, "from my sister." The color drained from his face. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The kitchen felt too small suddenly, the walls pressing in. The anniversary dinner I'd planned so carefully seemed like a cruel joke now. "How long has this been going on?" I asked. "How long has Courtney been filling your head with lies about me?" Dylan leaned against the doorframe, crossing his arms over his chest. It was a defensive posture, and that hurt almost as much as the messages. "She said she was concerned about you, about us. She said you'd been keeping secrets." "And you believed her?" The words came out sharper than I intended. "Dylan, You've known me for 3 years. You've known Courtney for maybe 6 months. You really thought she knew me better than you do? She's your sister, he said quietly. I thought she was trying to help. Help? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. She's been systematically trying to destroy our relationship. Did you even think to ask me about any of the things she said? Dylan's silence was answer enough. He had taken every word Courtney said as truth and held it against me without ever giving me a chance to defend myself. The realization settled in my chest like a stone. I need time, Dylan finally said, to think about all of this, to figure out what's real and what isn't. What's real is that I love you, I said, my voice breaking. What's real is that I've never lied to you, not once. And what's real is that my sister has been lying to both of us. But I could see in his eyes that the damage was done. The seeds of doubt had taken root and grown into something I wasn't sure I could cut away. Dylan grabbed his keys from the counter and walked out without another word, leaving me standing in the kitchen with cold marinara sauce and the ruins of what was supposed to be a celebration. As soon as the door closed behind him, I grabbed my phone and called Courtney. She answered on the third ring, her voice bright and cheerful. Hey, Chair, what's up? Don't play games with me, I said. I know what you've been doing. The cheerfulness evaporated. I don't know what you're talking about. The texts, Courtney. I saw all of them. 6 months of lies. Why? Why would you do this to me? There was a long pause. Then, in a voice so cold it made my skin prickle, she said, You took everything from me, Cher. Now it's your turn to lose. What are you talking about? I never took anything from you. Ethan, she said, and the name hung in the air between us like poison. You don't even remember, do you? 7 years ago, Ethan chose someone else over me because his family thought I wasn't good enough. And why did they think that? Because Mom and Dad spent my entire life comparing me to you. Perfect little Cher, smart Cher, pretty Cher, successful Cher. Ethan saw how I could never measure up to you, and he walked away. My mind reeled. Ethan had been Courtney's boyfriend in college. I barely knew him. We'd met maybe twice at family gatherings. That had nothing to do with me, I said. His family's expectations had nothing to do with me. Everything in my life has been about you, Courtney said, her voice rising. You've always been the golden child, the one everyone loves, the one who gets everything she wants. Well, if I can't have my happiness, you won't have yours either. The line went dead. I stood there in Dylan's kitchen, surrounded by the ingredients for a dinner we'd never eat, and tried to process what had just happened. My sister, the person who'd braided my hair when I was little and taught me how to ride a bike, had become someone I didn't recognize. Someone driven by jealousy so deep it had turned her into a stranger. I spent 3 sleepless nights replaying every conversation, every moment, trying to figure out when Courtney's resentment had turned into active sabotage. On the 4th day, I called Amanda. We met at the coffee shop near my apartment. The one with the overstuffed armchairs and terrible abstract art on the walls. Amanda listened to everything, her expression growing darker with each detail I shared. When I finished, she stirred her latte slowly, thinking, You need to fight this, she said finally. You can't just let Dylan walk away believing lies. But how? He already doesn't trust me. Evidence, Amanda said. You gather every piece of proof you can that Courtney's accusations are false. Bank statements showing you're financially independent. Your work calendar proving you were in meetings when she claimed you were somewhere else. Character witnesses, whatever it takes. So that's what I did. I spent the next week building my case like a lawyer preparing for trial. I printed bank statements showing my healthy savings account and my mortgage payments on my own condo. I got written statements from Travis confirming our professional lunch meeting. I pulled up emails and text messages that contradicted every timeline Courtney had suggested to Dylan. By the end, I had a folder 3 inches thick. Dylan agreed to meet me at Bridgewater Cafe, the place where we'd had our first date. He looked uncomfortable as I slid into the booth across from him, the vinyl squeaking under me. The cafe smelled like bacon, grease, and coffee, comfort food scents that usually made me happy. Today, they just made me nauseous. I know you think I'm here to make excuses, I said, pushing the folder across the table. But I'm not. I'm here to show you the truth. For the next 45 minutes, I walked Dylan through every document, every piece of evidence. I watched his face change as he read through it all. The skepticism gave way to confusion. then to something that looked like shame. I should have talked to you, he said quietly, staring at a bank statement that showed I earned just as much as he did. I should have asked you about these things instead of just believing. My sister, I finished. Yeah, you should have. I'm sorry, Chair. I really am. He reached across the table and took my hand. His fingers were warm, familiar. Can we try again? Start fresh? Relief flooded through me so powerfully I felt dizzy. Yes, I said. Yes, absolutely. We left the cafe hand in hand, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe properly. Dylan spent that night at my place. We talked until 2 in the morning. Really talked. About everything Courtney had said and why he'd been vulnerable to believing it. He admitted he'd been insecure about our relationship, worried that I was too good for him. Courtney had simply exploited those fears. For 3 beautiful days, everything felt right again. We fell back into our rhythm. Dylan would text me good morning. We'd meet for lunch when our schedules allowed. He even started planning a trip to the coast for us, something we'd been talking about for months. Then Dylan called me on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the middle of a client presentation, but I saw his name flash across my screen 3 times in a row. That wasn't like him. During my break, I called back. "We need to talk," he said, and my blood turned to ice. Those 4 words again. What happened? I got an email from an anonymous account. His voice was tight. There were photos, Cher. Photos of you with another man, and audio recordings, and emails you supposedly sent. What? That's impossible. Dylan, whatever it is, it's fake. It looks real, he said. It looks really real. The photos show you at restaurants I recognize. The audio sounds like your voice. The emails have your signature at the bottom. My mind spun. When? When were these photos supposedly taken? He rattled off dates. I pulled up my calendar with shaking hands. Dylan, I can prove where I was on every single one of those days. I was either at work, or with you, or with Amanda. Please, just let me see them. The email said you'd have excuses ready, Dylan said, and I could hear the pain in his voice. It said you'd been planning this, that you'd covered your tracks. And you believe that? After everything we just talked about? After I showed you proof that Courtney lied? I don't know what to believe anymore, Dylan said. Every time I think I have a handle on the truth, something else appears. It's like quicksand. The harder I try to find solid ground, the deeper I sink. Courtney's doing this, I said desperately. She's escalating because I called her out. Dylan, please don't let her win. I can't do this, he said quietly. I can't be in a relationship where I'm constantly questioning everything, where I don't know what's real. I'm sorry, Cher. I really am, but I'm done. The call ended. I sat in the conference room staring at my silent phone, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under me. My presentation materials were scattered across the table, but I couldn't remember what client I was supposed to be meeting with or what I was supposed to be saying. All I could think was that Courtney had won. That night, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I hired a tech consultant named Marcus, no relation to my ex, who owed Amanda a favor. Marcus was the kind of guy who could find digital fingerprints anywhere. Within 48 hours, he'd traced the email back to an IP address 2 blocks from Courtney's apartment. The photos had been manipulated using editing software. The audio had been created using an AI voice cloning tool. The emails had been sent from a spoofed account. Courtney had hired someone to create an entire fake evidence package. The level of planning, the amount of money she must have spent, it was staggering. This wasn't just petty revenge. This was a calculated campaign to destroy my life. But as I stared at Marcus's report, another thought occurred to me. I pulled up social media on my laptop and searched for Ethan Morrison, the man Courtney claimed was her one true love. His profile was semi-private, but I could see his basic information. Cardiologist at Memorial Hospital, recently divorced. Living in the city, recently divorced. An idea formed in my mind, dark and dangerous. Courtney had destroyed my relationship because she couldn't have Ethan. She'd spent months systematically dismantling my happiness out of jealousy and spite. What if I turned that around? What if I made her watch as Ethan fell for me instead? The thought made my stomach turn. It was manipulative. It was petty. It was exactly the kind of thing Courtney would do. But sitting there in my apartment, with Dylan's last words still echoing in my ears, I couldn't think of anything else that felt like justice. Courtney needed to understand what it felt like to lose something you loved. She needed to hurt the way she'd made me hurt. I closed my laptop, my mind already working through the logistics. Ethan worked at Memorial Hospital. That was only 15 minutes from my office. He probably had routines, patterns. All I had to do was find them. But even as I planned, a small voice in the back of my mind asked if this was really who I wanted to be. If revenge would actually make me feel better or just turn me into someone as twisted as Courtney had become. I pushed the voice away. I'd tried being the bigger person. I'd tried honesty and proof and rational conversation. None of it had mattered. Maybe it was time to fight fire with fire. I spent the next week doing research that would have made a private investigator proud. Ethan's social media was limited, but I found enough. He posted occasionally about medical conferences and running marathons. His profile picture showed a tall man with kind eyes and graying hair at his temples. He looked older than 30, more distinguished, like someone who'd lived through something difficult and come out stronger. His LinkedIn revealed more. Harvard Medical School, residency at Johns Hopkins, specializing in interventional cardiology. He'd published several papers on minimally invasive heart procedures. The man was clearly brilliant, dedicated to his work. I could see why Courtney had fallen for him. Through some creative social media stalking of Memorial Hospital's employee tags, I discovered Ethan frequented a coffee shop called Morning Grounds every Wednesday at 7:30 in the morning. The shop was a 5-minute walk from the hospital's main entrance. Perfect. I also learned he played tennis at Riverside Athletic Club on Saturday mornings. He volunteered at a free clinic on Tuesday evenings. The man had a routine, and routines could be intercepted. Wednesday morning, I woke up at 6 and spent longer than usual getting ready. I wasn't trying to look stunning, just put together and naturally pretty. Jeans and a soft blue sweater that Amanda always said brought out my eyes. Minimal makeup, hair down and loose. I needed to look like someone you'd want to talk to, not someone trying too hard. Morning Grounds was exactly the kind of place I expected. Exposed brick walls, mismatched furniture, and the rich smell of espresso. Local art covered the walls, most of it mediocre landscapes and abstract pieces that looked like the artist had thrown paint at a canvas. I ordered a latte and positioned myself near the cream and sugar station, strategically placed between the counter and the door. At 7:32, Ethan walked in. He was taller than I expected, maybe 6'2", with broad shoulders that filled out his button-down shirt nicely. He had the slightly rumpled look of someone who'd already been up for hours. There was a weariness around his eyes that spoke of long nights and difficult decisions. I waited until he ordered a black coffee and a blueberry muffin, and then I made my move. As he turned from the counter, I stepped directly into his path, looking down at my phone like I was reading something important. We collided. Hot coffee splashed across his shirt, and I gasped, jumping back. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." I grabbed napkins from the dispenser, dabbing uselessly at his shirt. I wasn't looking where I was going. I'm such a klutz. "It's okay," Ethan said, and his voice was deeper than I expected, warm like honey. "Really, it's not that hot. I'm fine." "No, it's not fine. I ruined your shirt." I looked up at him, meeting his eyes for the first time. They were brown, flecked with gold, and genuinely kind. "Please, let me buy you another coffee. And pay for dry cleaning or whatever." "That's really not necessary," he said. But he was smiling now, and I could see he was more amused than annoyed. "I insist. It's the least I can do for assaulting you with caffeine." He laughed at that, a genuine sound that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "All right, if it'll make you feel better." We ended up sitting at a small table by the window. The morning light streamed in, making dust motes dance in the air. I introduced myself as Cher, carefully not mentioning my last name. He introduced himself as Ethan, a cardiologist at Memorial. We talked for 20 minutes, just easy conversation about the neighborhood and the coffee shop's overpriced muffins. He mentioned he'd been coming here for 6 months, ever since his divorce finalized. "I'm sorry," I said. "Divorce is rough." "It is," he agreed. "But it was the right decision. We wanted different things. I wanted a partnership, and she wanted a trophy husband who would enhance her social status." He said it without bitterness, just stating facts. Sometimes the person you think is right turns out to be completely wrong. I thought about Dylan, about how everything had fallen apart. Yeah, I said quietly. I know exactly what you mean. When Ethan left for the hospital, we'd exchanged phone numbers. Maybe we could do this again sometime, he said. When you're not weaponizing beverages. I laughed, and it felt good. Real. For a moment, I almost forgot why I was really there. Over the next 2 weeks, Ethan and I texted regularly. Simple things at first. How's your day going? Crazy shift at the hospital. 3 emergencies before noon. Want to grab lunch Saturday? We met at an Italian restaurant downtown, the kind with red checkered tablecloths and candles stuck in wine bottles. The food was mediocre, but the conversation was anything but. Ethan talked about his work with a passion that was captivating. He described the miracle of watching a patient's heart rhythm stabilize after a procedure, the weight of holding someone's life literally in your hands. He talked about the free clinic where he volunteered, treating patients who couldn't afford insurance. Why medicine? I asked. It's such a demanding field. My dad had a heart attack when I was 16, Ethan said, twirling pasta on his fork. The surgeon who saved him was this gruff, brilliant man who treated my dad like he was the most important person in the world. I wanted to be that person for someone else's family, to give them back their father or mother or whoever they thought they'd lost. There was something genuinely good in Ethan Morrison, something honest and caring that shone through every word he said. It made what I was doing feel even more wrong. He mentioned his past relationship obliquely during dessert. There was someone I cared about a long time ago, he said, pushing tiramisu around his plate. Before my marriage, I let family pressure convince me to walk away from her. Biggest mistake of my life, probably. I spent years trying to make a relationship work with someone I didn't really love, all because my parents thought she came from the right family. I knew he was talking about Courtney. The knowledge sat in my stomach like a stone. Do you ever think about reaching out to her? I asked. To that person from before? Sometimes, Ethan admitted. But it's been 7 years. She's probably moved on. Built a whole life I'm not part of. It wouldn't be fair to show up now and disrupt whatever happiness she's found. If only he knew. Courtney hadn't moved on. She'd festered in her resentment until it poisoned everything around her, including me. Over the next month, Ethan and I saw each other 3 or 4 times a week. Coffee before his shifts, dinner after mine. A walk through Riverside Park where we fed ducks, stale bread, and talked about everything from politics to our favorite childhood memories. He told me about growing up in Connecticut, the pressure of living up to his surgeon father's expectations. I told him about my work in marketing, carefully editing out most mentions of my family. Ethan was easy to be with. He listened when I talked, really listened, not just waiting for his turn to speak. He remembered small details, like how I preferred tea over coffee in the evenings, and hated cilantro with a passion. He was thoughtful, showing up to dates with a book he thought I'd like, or a funny meme he'd seen that reminded him of something I'd said. And somewhere in the midst of all this careful planning and strategic manipulation, something shifted. I started looking forward to his texts, not because they were part of the plan, but because they genuinely made me smile. When he laughed at my jokes, I felt warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with revenge. When he touched my hand across the table, my heart rate spiked in a way that felt dangerously real. I was falling for him, actually falling for him, and that terrified me more than anything Courtney had done. One evening, as we walked along the riverfront watching boats drift past, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I opened the message and froze. A photo of Ethan and me at the Italian restaurant filled my screen. Below it, I know what you're doing. This won't end well for you. I looked up, scanning the darkening street. Courtney was here, somewhere, watching. My phone rang immediately after. I knew without checking it would be her. You think you're clever? Courtney's voice hissed through the speaker. You think you can steal Ethan from me? He's mine, Cher. He always has been. He was mine before you were even born, and he'll be mine long after you're gone. He was never yours, I said quietly, aware of Ethan beside me, looking concerned. He chose someone else 7 years ago. He's choosing someone else now. Maybe you should ask yourself why. I will destroy you, Courtney said, and her voice shook with rage. I will burn your entire life to the ground. Your career, your reputation, everything. Stay away from Ethan, or, I swear to God, Cher, you will regret it. Is that a threat? It's a promise. I have connections in marketing. One call to the right people and you'll never work in this city again. One email to your biggest clients and they'll drop you faster than Dylan did. The line went dead. I stood there on the riverfront, tourists and joggers passing by, feeling the world tilt sideways again. Courtney wasn't bluffing. She'd already proven how far she was willing to go, and now I'd given her a new target. Chair? Ethan touched my arm gently. What was that? You look like you've seen a ghost. It's nothing, I lied, just a difficult client. But Ethan wasn't fooled. We've been seeing each other for over a month now. I think I can tell when something's really bothering you. Talk to me. I wanted to. God, I wanted to tell him everything. About Courtney and Dylan and this whole mess. But if I did, he'd know the truth about why I'd approached him. He'd know our entire relationship was built on a lie, even if my feelings had become real somewhere along the way. It's complicated, I said finally. I'm a cardiologist, Ethan said with a small smile. I specialize in complicated. But before I could respond, my work phone buzzed. Then again. And again. I pulled it out to find a series of increasingly frantic emails from my boss, Richard. Need to see you first thing tomorrow. Serious allegations have been made. Bring documentation of your work on Henderson account. My blood turned cold. Courtney had already made her move. I barely slept that night. At 8:30 the next morning, I sat in Richard's office, my heart hammering against my ribs. He was 50-something with wire-rimmed glasses and a perpetual expression of mild disappointment. Today, that disappointment looked a lot less mild. We received an anonymous email yesterday, Richard said, sliding a printed copy across his desk. With detailed accusations that you stole creative concepts from Travis Morrison for the Henderson pitch. There are attached documents that appear to show original drafts from Travis that match your final presentation almost word for word. I scanned the email. It was sophisticated, professionally written, with just enough detail to sound credible. The attached documents were forgeries, but good ones. Someone had taken Travis's actual writing style and mimicked it perfectly. This is fabricated, I said, keeping my voice steady. Travis and I worked on that pitch together. He can confirm that. I've already spoken to Travis, Richard said. He says he doesn't remember the collaboration being quite so equal. He seemed confused about the whole thing, actually. Of course, Courtney would have thought of that. She'd probably sent Travis his own set of doctored emails, making him genuinely uncertain about what had happened months ago. I have the original working files, I said. Timestamps, version histories, everything. I can prove those documents are fake. I hope you can, Richard said, but his tone made it clear he'd already made up his mind. Until we complete our investigation, you're suspended from the Henderson account. Taylor will take over. We can't afford even the appearance of impropriety. I walked back to my desk, feeling like everyone's eyes were on me. The rational part of my brain knew that was paranoia, but it didn't stop the shame burning in my chest. Taylor gave me a sympathetic smile as she passed, but I could see the calculation in her eyes. She'd wanted the Henderson account for months. Now she had it, courtesy of my sister's lies. My personal phone rang as I gathered my things. Ethan. Hey, I said, trying to sound normal. What's up? I need to ask you something. His voice was different, cautious. Have you heard any rumors about me lately? My stomach dropped. What kind of rumors? Someone sent a letter to the hospital administration. Anonymous, of course. Claiming I'm in a relationship with someone who's only interested in my position and salary. That I'm being taken advantage of by a gold digger. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. I told them it was ridiculous, but they seemed to think it was worth mentioning. Courtney, of course. She wasn't just attacking me. She was poisoning Ethan against me, just like she'd done with Dylan. Ethan, I started, then stopped. What could I say? That my sister was systematically destroying both our lives? That our entire relationship had started as a revenge plot I'd lost control of? It's nothing, Ethan continued. I know you're not like that. We're fine, right? Right, I said weakly. But we weren't fine. Nothing was fine. That afternoon, I did something I should have done weeks ago. I drove to my parents' house, a modest colonial in the suburbs where Courtney had been living since her own divorce 2 years earlier. Dad's car wasn't in the driveway, which was good. I didn't want him involved in this. I found Mom in the kitchen, putting away groceries. She looked up and smiled when I walked in, but the smile faded when she saw my face. Cher, what's wrong, honey? Where's Courtney? Upstairs, I think. Why? I didn't answer. I took the stairs two at a time and found Courtney in her childhood bedroom, which still had her high school gymnastics trophies on the shelves and a poster of some 90s boy band on the wall. She was on her laptop, and when she saw me, she didn't even have the grace to look guilty. "Finally figured it out?" she asked casually. "You're destroying my career. You're attacking Ethan. This has to stop." "Or what?" Courtney closed her laptop and stood up. We were the same height, but she'd always seemed bigger somehow, more imposing. "You'll tell Mom and Dad? You'll try to prove it was me? Good luck with that. I've been very careful." "Why?" The word came out broken. "Why do you hate me this much?" "Because you've had everything handed to you your entire life." Courtney's composure cracked. Perfect grades without studying, friends without trying, jobs without networking, and men. God, men fall all over themselves for you. Do you know what it's like to always come in second to your little sister? To watch her succeed at everything while you struggle? "I've worked for everything I have," I said. "And you know what? None of it has anything to do with you. Your problems with Ethan, your career struggles, your relationships, those are your issues. Not mine. Everything is about you," Courtney shot back. "Mom and Dad comparing me to you. Ethan's family seeing me as not good enough because you set the bar so high. My ex-husband wondering why I couldn't be more like his friend's wife, who turned out to be one of your old college friends." Footsteps thundered up the stairs. Mom appeared in the doorway, Dad right behind her. They must have heard the shouting. "What is going on?" Mom demanded. Courtney and I both started talking at once. The story spilled out in a chaotic mess. Dylan and the text messages, the fake evidence packages, Ethan and my revenge plot that became something real, the attacks on my career, all of it. Mom sank onto Courtney's bed, looking between us with horror. Dad stood frozen in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "You did all that?" Mom asked Courtney. "You deliberately sabotaged your sister's relationship?" "She was going to be happy," Courtney said, and now tears were streaming down her face. "She was going to have this perfect life with Dylan, while I sat alone in this house, sleeping in my childhood bedroom because I can't afford my own place. It wasn't fair." "So you decided to make Cher miserable too?" Dad's voice was quiet but sharp as a blade. "That's your solution? If you can't be happy, no one can?" "And you," Mom turned to me. "You went after Ethan deliberately? To hurt your sister?" At first I admitted, yes, I was angry and hurt, and I wanted her to feel what I felt. But then, I swallowed hard. Then I actually got to know him, and everything got complicated. "Complicated?" Courtney laughed bitterly. "You fell for him. The man I've loved for 7 years. You took him just to prove you could." "He was never yours to take," I said. "He chose not to be with you 7 years ago. That was his choice, not mine." The doorbell rang. We all froze, looking at each other. Mom went downstairs to answer it. We heard her voice, then a man's voice, a familiar voice. Ethan appeared in the doorway. The air left the room. Courtney's eyes went wide. Dad looked confused. I felt my heart stop. "I'm sorry to show up unannounced," Ethan said, looking at me. "But after you hung up earlier, you seemed really upset. I was worried. I tried calling back, but you didn't answer." His gaze swept the room, landing on Courtney. His expression shifted to shock. "Courtney? What are you doing here?" "This is my parents' house," Courtney said quietly. "Cher is my sister." I watched understanding dawn on Ethan's face. The color drained from his cheeks. He looked at me, and I saw the exact moment he put all the pieces together. The strategic coffee shop meeting, the perfect timing, the way I'd inserted myself into his life right after his divorce, right when he was vulnerable. "So everything between us was a lie?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "You approached me because of Courtney? Because of something that happened 7 years ago?" "No," I said desperately. "I mean, yes, at first, but then it became real. Ethan, my feelings for you are real. How am I supposed to believe that?" He took a step back, like I might be contagious. "How am I supposed to trust anything you've said when our entire relationship is built on manipulation?" "I'm sorry," I said, and tears were flowing freely now. "I'm so sorry. I was hurt and angry and I made a terrible mistake. But what we have? It's not fake. I swear it's not." I thought. Ethan's voice broke. "I thought maybe I could try again. After everything with my marriage, After years of feeling like I'd made all the wrong choices, I thought I'd finally found someone genuine. Someone who saw me for who I am, not what I could provide or what family I come from. He looked at Courtney. I'm sorry I hurt you 7 years ago. I was weak and I let my family control my decisions. I've regretted that every day since. Then back to me. But this? Using my past mistakes to manipulate me? That's cruel in a way I never expected from you. He turned and walked away. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, the front door opening and closing, the sound of his car engine starting in the driveway. Courtney smiled, but it was the saddest smile I'd ever seen. Now you know how it feels, she said, to lose everything. For 7 days, I lived in a fog. I called in sick to work. Not that I had much work to do with the suspension still in place. I ignored calls from Amanda, from my parents, from everyone. I alternated between sleeping too much and lying awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment with Ethan and wondering if any of it had been real or if I'd just been playing a role the whole time. On the 8th day, Amanda showed up at my apartment with Thai food and a determined expression. She let herself in with the spare key I'd given her years ago and found me on the couch in pajamas, surrounded by tissues and watching cooking shows without really seeing them. Okay, she said, setting the food on the coffee table. Pity party's over. Time to get up and fight. There's nothing to fight for, I said. I lost. Courtney won. It's done. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard you say, and I once heard you argue that hot dogs are sandwiches. Amanda sat down next to me and grabbed the remote, turning off the TV. You made a mistake. A big one. But so did Courtney. The difference is, she set out to destroy you on purpose. You set out to hurt her, but you stopped. You found something real with Ethan, which I've now ruined completely. Maybe not, but you'll never know if you just give up. Amanda pulled me upright. First, we're going to deal with your career. Then we're going to deal with Courtney. And then, if you still want to, we'll figure out what to do about Ethan. She was right. Lying here wallowing wasn't solving anything. I showered for the first time in 3 days and actually put on real clothes. Then Amanda and I went to work. Travis, my colleague, had always been a straight shooter. When I met him at a coffee shop and laid out the timeline of events, showed him the forged documents, he pulled up his own records. This is bizarre, he said, scrolling through old emails. These supposed drafts I sent you? I never wrote them. Look, here's my actual contribution to the Henderson project. It's completely different. Someone went to a lot of trouble to make it look authentic, I said. Someone with a serious grudge. Travis looked at me seriously. Cher, I've worked with you for 4 years. You're one of the most ethical people I know. If you say this is a setup, I believe you. I'll write a statement for Richard. From there, I contacted Marcus again. He tracked down the digital trail of the fake documents, traced them back to their source. The fabrication had been professional grade, but not professional enough to hide completely. Everything pointed back to an IP address 2 blocks from Courtney's current residence. I also reached out to a friend from law school who now practiced civil litigation. She looked at all the evidence of Courtney's harassment campaign and whistled low. This is textbook defamation, she said. Possibly cyber harassment too. You could sue her for damages. You'd probably win. I don't want to sue my sister, I said. No, you want to what? Just let her keep destroying your life? I want her to stop. But I want her to stop because she realizes what she's doing is wrong, not because I forced her through the courts. My friend shook her head. You're either incredibly forgiving or incredibly naive. Maybe both. Maybe she was right. But Courtney was still my sister. Despite everything, I remembered her teaching me to tie my shoes when I was 5. I remembered her defending me from a bully in middle school. I remembered 1,000 small kindnesses from before jealousy had twisted her into someone unrecognizable. I arranged to meet Courtney at Riverside Park, neutral territory. She showed up, looking guarded, arms crossed over her chest. What do you want? She asked. I handed her a folder. That's documentation of everything you've done. The fake evidence you created, the emails you sent, the IP addresses Marcus traced, the testimony from Travis, all of it. Courtney's face went pale as she flipped through the pages. I could destroy you with this, I said. I could send it to your employer, to Mom and Dad. I could file a lawsuit that would cost you everything you have left. But I'm not going to. Why not? Courtney's voice was small. Because you're my sister. Because somewhere under all this anger and jealousy is the person who used to braid my hair and let me sleep in her room when I had nightmares. Because I believe people can change if they want to badly enough. Tears welled in Courtney's eyes. I don't deserve that. No, you don't. But I'm giving it to you anyway. On one condition, you stop. Right now. No more interference in my career, my relationships, my life. You leave Ethan alone. You leave Dylan alone. You leave me alone. And you get help. Real professional help for whatever's been eating you up inside all these years. And if I don't? Then I use this. I tap the folder, and I won't feel guilty about it. Courtney nodded slowly, wiping at her eyes. I called Ethan, she said suddenly. After he found out about you. He called me because he didn't know who else to talk to. My heart clenched. What did he say? He said he understood why I was angry at him. Why I'd been carrying that around all these years. And he said, she took a shaky breath. He said that what he had with you was different from what we had back then. That he'd felt something real with you, something he hadn't felt in years. Why are you telling me this? Because I realized something when he said it. I've been holding on to this fantasy of Ethan for 7 years. But the man I loved back then isn't the same person he is now. And honestly, I'm not the same person either. I was so busy being angry that you might have a chance with him that I never stopped to think about whether I actually still wanted that chance. She closed the folder and handed it back to me. I'll stop. I'll get help. I'll fix this mess as much as I can fix it. But Cher, don't expect us to be best friends anytime soon. This is going to take time. I know, I said. I'm okay with time. As Courtney walked away, I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, exactly. Not yet. But maybe the beginning of it. Or at least the possibility. Richard called me into his office a week later. I walked in expecting the worst, prepared for termination or permanent damage to my reputation. Instead, he smiled and gestured to a chair. I owe you an apology, he said. Travis provided documentation that completely contradicts the accusations made against you. We also had our IT department investigate, and they found evidence the documents in question were fabricated and sent from an external source. Relief flooded through me so powerfully my hands shook. So I'm reinstated? Reinstated and promoted, actually. The Henderson account is yours again, along with lead position on the Bartlett merger we've been pursuing. Taylor will report to you. He leaned back in his chair. I should have trusted you from the beginning. You've never given me reason to doubt your integrity. I let anonymous accusations override years of excellent work, and I'm sorry. Thank you, I managed. That means a lot. Walking out of Richard's office, I felt lighter than I had in months. Taylor actually looked genuinely happy for me, which was a surprise. Maybe the professional world had a few more good people in it than I'd thought. But the real challenge still remained. Ethan. I'd seen him exactly once since everything imploded at my parents' house. He'd been leaving the hospital as I was walking past, and our eyes had met for a brief, painful second before he'd looked away and kept walking. The rejection stung worse than anything Courtney had done. For 2 weeks, I tried to work up the courage to reach out. I must have typed and deleted 50 different text messages. I'm sorry seemed too simple. Let me explain felt presumptuous. I miss you was too vulnerable. Finally, I did something that felt both incredibly brave and incredibly stupid. I wrote him a letter. An actual, physical letter on nice stationery. I told him everything. About Dylan and Courtney's campaign to destroy that relationship. About my hurt and anger that had led me to seek revenge. About the moment in the coffee shop when I'd deliberately spilled his coffee. About every calculated move I'd made to insert myself into his life. But I also wrote about the moment it all changed. The dinner where he'd talked about his father's heart attack, and I'd seen real passion in his eyes. The walk through the park when he'd told me about his failed marriage, and I'd understood his loneliness. The way my heart had started racing when I saw his name on my phone, and it wasn't part of the plan anymore, it was just real. I wrote, I approached you with the wrong intentions. I won't lie about that or try to justify it. What I did was manipulative and wrong, and I understand if you never forgive me. But somewhere along the way, between the coffee shop and the riverfront, between the Italian restaurant and feeding ducks in the park, I fell in love with you. Really, truly fell in love with you. And that terrifies me more than anything else, because it means I have something real to lose. I mailed the letter to the hospital, marked personal and confidential. Then I waited. 7 days passed with no response. Then 10. By day 14, I'd convinced myself he'd thrown it away unread. But on day 17, my phone rang. Ethan's name on the screen made my breath catch. "Hello?" My voice came out shakier than I wanted. "Can we meet?" Ethan asked. "I think we need to talk in person." We agreed on Riverside Park, the same place I'd met with Courtney. It seemed fitting somehow, like this park had become the place where my life's dramatic moments played out. Ethan was already there when I arrived, sitting on a bench overlooking the water. The late afternoon sun caught the gray in his hair, making it shine silver. He looked tired, like he hadn't been sleeping well. That made two of us. I sat down next to him, leaving space between us. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. We just watched the river flow past, steady and unchanging. "I got your letter," Ethan said finally. "I've read it about 20 times. And I don't know what to think." He turned to face me. "Everything you wrote, it all makes sense logically. I understand how you got from point A to point B, how hurt and anger can make us do things we normally wouldn't. But understanding something intellectually isn't the same as being able to get past it emotionally." My heart sank. "So you can't forgive me?" I didn't say that. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, that familiar gesture I'd seen him do when he was working through a difficult problem. "I've been doing a lot of thinking these past few weeks. About my marriage, about Courtney, about you, about patterns in my life." "What kind of patterns?" "I have a habit of running away when things get complicated. I did it with Courtney 7 years ago. I stayed in a bad marriage for 6 years because leaving felt too hard. And my first instinct when I found out about your initial intentions was to run again, to cut you out completely and protect myself. That would be the smart thing to do," I said quietly. "Maybe, but I'm tired of being smart. I'm tired of making decisions based on fear or what other people think I should do." He looked at me directly now, those brown and gold eyes searching mine. "I talked to Courtney last week." I blinked in surprise. "You did?" "She called me, said she needed to apologize for dragging me into her issues with you. We talked for about an hour." Ethan smiled slightly. "It was good, actually. We needed that closure. To acknowledge what we had 7 years ago, and let it go properly, and she said something that stuck with me." "What did she say?" "She said, 'Don't let my mistakes cost you a chance at happiness. Cher is a good person who made a bad decision, but she came clean about it.' That's more than I can say for myself." Ethan shifted closer on the bench. "She's right. What you did was wrong, but you owned it. You didn't try to justify it or minimize it. You just told me the truth, even though the truth made you look terrible." "So what does that mean?" I almost didn't want to ask, afraid of the answer. "It means I want to try again, but not picking up where we left off. I want to start over. Really start over. With honesty, from day one." He held out his hand. "Hi, I'm Ethan Morrison. I'm a cardiologist at Memorial Hospital. I'm recently divorced, possibly too much of a workaholic, and I have terrible taste in movies. I'm also trying to figure out how to trust again after being burned a few times." Tears welled in my eyes, but I was smiling as I took his hand. "Hi, I'm Cher. I'm a marketing consultant who was recently promoted. I have a complicated relationship with my sister that we're working on. I made some really bad choices recently, but I'm trying to be better, and I think you're one of the best people I've ever met. Want to get coffee sometime?" Ethan asked. "There's this place called Morning Grounds. I promise not to let you spill anything on me." I laughed. Actually laughed, for the first time in weeks. I'd love that. We sat there on the bench for another hour, just talking. Really talking. About everything. Our fears and insecurities and hopes, the things we wanted from life and relationships, the mistakes we'd made and the lessons we'd learned. It felt like peeling back layers, revealing the real people underneath all the hurt and confusion. When we finally stood to leave, Ethan pulled me into a hug. It wasn't romantic or passionate, just warm and genuine and real. And somehow, that meant more than anything else could have. 6 months later, I stood in my parents' living room for Sunday dinner, a tradition we'd recently reinstated. Ethan stood next to me, his hand warm in mine as Dad told an embarrassing story from my childhood involving a science fair project and a catastrophically exploding volcano. Courtney sat across the room, laughing at Dad's story. She looked different, healthier. She'd been going to therapy twice a week and had moved into her own apartment downtown. She'd also gone back to school to pursue a teaching credential, something she'd always wanted to do but had convinced herself she wasn't good enough for. Our relationship wasn't perfect. Some days were still awkward, conversations stilted and careful, but we were trying. We'd had coffee together twice last month, just the two of us, and talked about real things instead of dancing around the elephant in the room. She'd apologized again, more thoroughly this time, for everything she'd done. I'd apologized for my revenge plot. We'd both cried and agreed that our family had some serious issues to work through, but we were committed to doing it. Mom had insisted on family therapy sessions, which were about as fun as they sounded but were actually helping. We'd talked about comparison culture, about how Mom and Dad had unintentionally created competition between us. They'd apologized too, promised to be more mindful. It was slow work, but it was work. "How's the new project going?" Ethan asked Courtney, and I loved him a little more for making the effort to include her in conversation. "Really well, actually," Courtney said. "I'm student teaching at Jefferson Elementary, 2nd grade. The kids are exhausting but amazing." "That's wonderful," Ethan said genuinely. "You always had a gift with kids. I remember you volunteering at that summer camp years ago." Courtney smiled, but it reached her eyes this time. "You remember that?" "Of course, you were great with them." It was a small moment, but it mattered. Ethan and Courtney had achieved their own peace, separate from me. They'd met for lunch a month ago, just to talk through old issues, and establish that they could be friendly, without it being weird for anyone. It had been Ethan's idea, and I'd appreciated the gesture even though it had made me nervous. My career was thriving. The Henderson account had led to 3 more major clients. Richard had mentioned partnership possibilities for next year. I'd even hired an assistant, a sharp, recent graduate named Sophie who reminded me of myself 5 years ago, all ambition and determination. But the real victory wasn't professional, it was this. Standing in my parents' living room with Ethan's hand in mine, watching Courtney laugh at Dad's terrible jokes, seeing Mom bring out her famous pot roast, and act like everything was normal. Because it was starting to be normal again. A different normal than before, one built on honesty instead of unspoken resentments, but normal nonetheless. After dinner, Ethan and I walked through the neighborhood, the same streets where Courtney and I had learned to ride bikes and had played until the streetlights came on. "Do you ever regret how we met?" Ethan asked, echoing a question he'd asked once before. I thought about it, really thought about it. I regret the pain it caused, the hurt and confusion and all the collateral damage. But I don't regret finding you. Does that make me a terrible person? "It makes you human," Ethan said. "We all do things we wish we could undo. The question is what we do after, whether we learn and grow or just keep making the same mistakes." Very philosophical for a heart doctor. "The heart's a complicated organ," he said with a smile, physically and metaphorically. We walked in comfortable silence for a while. I thought about everything that had happened over the past year. The pain and betrayal, the anger and revenge, the gradual healing and forgiveness. It had been the hardest year of my life, but also maybe the most important. I'd learned that revenge doesn't heal wounds, it just creates new ones. That family relationships are complicated and messy and sometimes broken, but they can be repaired if everyone involved is willing to do the work. That love can grow in unexpected places, even in the middle of chaos and bad decisions. That forgiveness, real forgiveness, is one of the hardest and most necessary things we do. Most importantly, I'd learned about myself, about my capacity for both cruelty and compassion, about my strength and my weaknesses, about what I valued and what I was willing to fight for. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked. "Just how far we've all come," I said. "A year ago, Courtney and I weren't speaking. Dylan had just walked out of my life. You and I hadn't met yet. Everything felt broken beyond repair. And now? Now I'm standing here with you. Courtney's getting her life together. Mom and Dad are trying to be better parents. My career's back on track." I squeezed his hand. "Things aren't perfect, but they're good. Really good." "They are," Ethan agreed. We reached the park where everything had almost fallen apart and also started to come back together. The same bench where Ethan and I had decided to try again was empty, waiting. We sat down, watching the sun set over the water in shades of orange and pink. "Can I tell you something?" I said. "Always. When this all started, When I first decided to go after you to hurt Courtney, I thought revenge would make me feel powerful, like I was taking control of a situation that had made me feel powerless. But it just made me feel hollow, worse than before. What changed? Ethan asked. You, I said simply. Getting to know you, falling for you for real, it showed me what actually matters. Not making other people hurt the way you hurt. Not keeping score or trying to prove you're better than someone else. Just being honest and kind and real with the people you care about. That's a good lesson, Ethan said. Hard one, but good. The best lessons usually are. As darkness fell and stars started appearing in the sky, I thought about Courtney. About her sitting alone in that coffee shop where I'd met her last week, telling me about the kids in her class and the man she'd started seeing, a fellow teacher who made her laugh. About how she'd looked lighter somehow, less burdened by the weight of jealousy and resentment. My sister had tried to destroy my happiness because she couldn't have her own. She'd sabotaged my relationship with Dylan and attacked my career and made my life miserable for months. But in the end, she'd given me something unexpected. She'd forced me to confront who I was and who I wanted to be. She'd pushed me to the edge where I had to choose between becoming like her or finding a better way. I'd chosen better. Not perfectly, not without mistakes. But I'd chosen to stop the cycle of hurt and retaliation. To forgive, even when it was hard. To build something real instead of tearing things down. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But I learned something more important. Forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply moving on and finding happiness. Not in someone else's misery, but in our own peace. My sister destroyed my relationship because she couldn't have her one true love. I set out to make her watch him fall for me instead. But the real victory wasn't winning Ethan. It was letting go of the need to win at all. It was choosing love over revenge, understanding over anger, forgiveness over resentment. And somehow, that was the greatest triumph of all. So here's what I want to ask you. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? How did you handle it? Did you choose revenge or forgiveness? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own relationships and choices, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories. Share this with someone who might need to hear it, someone who's struggling with family drama or betrayal or the temptation of revenge. Sometimes we all need a reminder that there's a better way forward. Thank you for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to share, but I hope it helps someone out there who's going through something similar. Remember, healing takes time, forgiveness takes work, and being the bigger person is hard. But it's worth it. You're worth it. Take care of yourselves and each other. Until next time.